Some of you might have seen the movie Inception. Frankly, I had to see this movie twice to get a hold and grasp of all the nuances that the director, Christopher Nolan, was attempting to communicate. Trust me, the only thing that is more confusing than the plot of Inception is hospital pricing. There is no doubt in my mind that hospital pricing, in general, is arbitrary. It is a movie without a plot, without a script, and you don't have to take my word for it. I will argue in the upcoming videos in this section on hospital pricing that the biggest driver of hospital pricing is whatever the hospital can get away with. Hospitals are getting away with murder when it comes to pricing. There is no method to this madness. Here is an interesting anecdote that I read some time ago in the Wall Street Journal. And this is an article which shares the cost of a C-section within the same healthcare network, Sutter Health System in California. And the costs for this very standard C-section within the same network for exactly the same person were reported as follows. Hospital 1 gave a cost of $6,241 US. Hospital 2 reported $29,257. Hospital 3, $38,264. And Hospital 4, a whopping $60,584. I mean, these are actual figures. And look at the range. Hospital 1 is around $6,000 and Hospital 4 is 10x, $60,000. Can you even get your mind around this? Can you wrap around this difference? It is just extraordinary what is happening with hospital pricing. And this intrigued me a little bit, although I know from my own experience that hospital pricing is pretty random and arbitrary. But when I read this article in the Wall Street Journal, I decided to dig a little deeper into C-sections in particular so that I can argue my point more forcefully. Have a look at the slide that's coming up. Here's the slide that outlines the fact that hospital pricing variation, really there's no method to this madness. I just narrated to you the incident about the C-section costs within 4 hospitals of the same healthcare network, the Sutter healthcare system. I found more evidence, and here is a graph that illustrates the distribution of median charges of C-sections across different hospitals. The x-axis represents the price ranges for C-sections in US dollars in bars. And in the y-axis, you will find the number of hospitals that fall within these price ranges. You will see that there is a typical normal distribution curve. So you have about 5 hospitals that were charging up to about $10,000 US for a C-section procedure. About 20 hospitals charged between $11,000 and $15,000 US. 30 hospitals charged between $15,000 and $20,000 US. Of course, the median was about 45 hospitals here that charged between $20,000 and $30,000, and 30 hospitals charged between $30,000 and $40,000, 20 between $40,000 and $45,000, and another 5 charged between $45,000 and $50,000. So if you look at the 2 quartiles at the end, you have 5 hospitals that charge between $45,000 and $50,000, and you have 5 hospitals charging between up to $10,000. That's a 10x difference. Just like we saw within one network, this is a result or a survey across networks and across hospitals, and the standard deviation is significant. Now, it is highly unlikely that the hospitals in the last quartile here have proportionately higher costs as compared to the ratio in order to justify the premium as compared to the costs of the hospital in this quarter. Also remember, and I will argue this in the upcoming slides, in healthcare, more price or fancy hospitals need not always necessarily mean better outcomes. In the year 2022, I was diagnosed with late stage colorectal cancer. I was in India then, and I started looking for options. Everything was nebulous. And as I started looking at the options, different hospitals, costing, pricing, and for the regimen that my kind of staging and cancer needed, which was, radiotherapy, multiple surgeries, adjuvant chemo, etc., I received budgets from hospitals that ranged from 30 lakh Indian rupees, approximately 40,000 US dollars, to almost 1.5 crores, which is close to, let's say, 200,000 US dollars, right? That's a 5x variation. And again, intrigued, I started looking for studies to see if indeed this was normal. And I was blown away with what I stumbled upon. There was this study that reported the cost of IMRT, intensity modulated radiation therapy, 52 hospitals study, right? And these 52 hospital studies, they basically looked at the listed fee for a standard 28 fraction treatment, exactly the same level of intensity, same duration, for a similar kind of staging in prostate cancer. The charges ranged from 18,368 US dollars to a high of 399,000 and change, almost $400,000. The mean pricing was about $111,000 something. Just think about this. Does anyone in their right mind think that the IMRT treatment in the center, which charged, $18,000, would be dramatically different from the one that's charging $400,000? It just gets better and funnier. You remember the Sutter Health example I spoke to you about with respect to C-section prices. So there was another study to look at, is this only limited to C-section, or does this phenomenon of arbitrariness in pricing extend elsewhere? And what they found was that for one billing code that represented complex cardiac procedures in fragile patients, pricing could range from as low as $89,000 to almost $515,000, more than $500,000. It's absolutely mind-bending, to say the least. In fact, the Journal of Economics actually published a study analyzing 88 million privately insured citizens, and they found that prices paid for surgery at the same hospital in the US sometimes were double the prices at the others. And it might sound over exaggerated, but when I say that with pricing, there is no method to the madness and that hospitals are getting away with murder, it's not a joke. It is what it is.